Welcome back to the channel. So this story is probably going to divide people quite a bit, I predict. So as you're listening, do let me know in the comment section below which side of the fence you're on for this one. Because as I say, I think it's going to divide opinion somewhat. So one of you guys sent me a news story about Sainsbury's demanding that you scan your receipt on exit from the self-checkouts. Now, this is not the first time this has happened, because just back in November, Primark was reported at doing the same thing. So essentially, for those of you that are not sort of following what's going on, this is what it is. So most of these supermarkets now have a self-checkout service where you can pick up a device, you can scan as you're going around, you put it in the bag or whatever it is, and you pay and you leave. So you don't actually take them off, put them on the conveyor belt and all that sort of stuff. Now, most of you are familiar with that, so forgive me for going over simple ground, but that's how the self-checkouts work. Now, because, believe it or not, some people decide to steal things from supermarkets, and obviously if you're doing self-checkout and you put them in the bag, then no one else is checking them in that process. There is, of course, the heightened possibility of people stealing things. Now, I'm not really sure that scanning the receipt on exit is going to stop people from stealing things, because if people are going to steal things, they might just scan 5 items and they've taken 10, so they haven't paid for 5 items within the bag. So I'm not entirely convinced that scanning the receipt on exit is going to prevent this problem. Anyway, I think the only thing that it does do is ensure that people leaving that area have actually paid for something, because I think that's all it really does. By scanning the receipt to open the barriers, that's really all it's going to do, is going to show the supermarket that you have paid for something and therefore open the barriers. But then the question is, how many people can get through the barrier at one time? Can people sneak through and all of this sort of thing? So there's a few questions that pop up with this, obviously. One of the comments in the Sun article, which was what was sent to me, which I read because it was sent to me, let's be clear. I looked at this, and one of the comments within there said that people felt that they are being held hostage by having to scan their receipt on exit. Now, let's be absolutely clear. If the person exiting didn't want to scan the receipt and just wanted to leave, but they have paid, then it's going to be quite a difficult situation for the shop to force them to scan the receipt and blatantly refuse to let them leave. Obviously, they cannot refuse outright to let them leave, because that would be false imprisonment. So there is a bit of a legal technicality as to whether they can force them to do something in order to leave the store by scanning the receipt. But in all this, you can probably sense that I actually don't think it's that much of a big deal. If I've gone to a self-service supermarket, which I always do, I think since they've been introduced, there are very few times that I haven't used the self-service checkout. And so I don't really think it's an extra step just to scan the receipt on the way out. I do think it's a little bit of a strange step to put a barrier there to force you to scan the receipt to exit. But let's be honest about it, these stores are probably in areas where the risk of theft is very much higher, and the supermarket is doing what they can to at least establish that the person exiting has paid for something rather than just walk out. Because some of the cases that we've seen are very brazen indeed. So we've had some cases where someone has walked into a supermarket, picked up 2 bottles of whiskey off the shelf and walked straight out of the door with it. Absolutely no cares in the world given whatsoever. They've just picked them up and walked them out. That's really bizarre and really brazen criminal behavior, but still people do that. So I don't really think that is what this is designed to prevent. I think this is designed to create a normality where you go in, you scan your items, you pay for the items, and you scan the receipt to exit the store. Now, I think this will be probably more prevalent throughout the country, where more stores are adopting self-checkouts and phasing out the traditional checkout. Perhaps this is going to be the norm, where you scan the receipt to exit. Now, as I said, there's a legal technicality as to whether they can force you to scan the receipt, or what if you don't have the receipt? Are they going to try to keep you there? Of course not. They can't force you to stay in the store just because you don't have the receipt, or maybe you've been the receipt, or if someone is being really stubborn, just refusing to scan the receipt. What would they really say if somebody just outright refused to show them the receipt or scan the receipt? Technically speaking, the store cannot forcibly search the person, i.e. forcibly go through the bags and check for the receipt and whatever once they've paid. Because once they have paid, that's it. That's the transaction concluded as far as the consumer is concerned. Even beforehand, the store is going to be on slightly dodgy ground, forcing a search of the consumer's bag even before they've paid for it, because they have no right to search the consumer's bag. If they do suspect that they've stolen items, then what they ought to do is they can detain them by a citizen's arrest until the police come, and only the police can do a search if the police are convinced that there's reasonable grounds to suspect that a crime has taken place and that they need to search the bags. But the store cannot forcibly do that themselves. Much less, once the customer's paid and then try to leave, the store cannot demand to search the bags. At best, they would have to detain them there and wait for the police to come. But coming back to the point, is it really an issue to scan the receipt on exit? I don't think so. I would have absolutely no problem in doing that whatsoever. The only problems I can see coming up are if the receipt wasn't dispensed properly, or I'd accidentally binned it for whatever reason and then didn't realize that this was a barriered exit and that I need the receipt to exit, and then I get some overzealous security guard trying to detain me because I don't have the receipt. Now, if there is a reasonable ground to suspect that I'd stolen something, then yes, they could detain me there and ask for the police to come, and only then the police could search me. But I do think that is a bit of a stretch too far. Some of you, quite understandably, will be thinking that absolutely not, I'm not going to be forced to scan a receipt to exit the store and this kind of thing. But in that sense, I would urge you to think that the store is just trying to protect itself from those that are going to steal things and walk through without having paid for anything. Because one thing that shoplifters often do is get among a crowd of people and then disappear through the exit undetected because they're just in a crowd of people. In fact, it's one of the oldest shoplifters' tricks in the books to walk out of a store with bags to make it look like they've actually paid for them. One of the methods used to do this is called a nested trolley. What they do is they get a trolley, they put large boxes, usually cereal boxes, around the outside of the trolley so that you can't see inside of it from the outside, but from the outside it looks like a normal trolley full of shopping. But what then they actually do is they put normal bags on the inside, they fill those normal bags with expensive things, they move the trolley back to a crowded area near the exit, they pick the carrier bags up out of the middle and they walk out in a crowd of people, and then ostensibly to everybody else it looks like they're just walking out having paid with a bag full of groceries. Now obviously this was in the traditional days of plastic bags. Now you've got your own bags, arguably making it more difficult, because when I go shopping I've got my own bags, so they're going in a bag from the beginning. As soon as I pick them off the shelf, I scan them, put them in the bag, and then pay for them, and off I go. But how is the store going to detect whether someone's stealing things when they are in bags, their own bags, all the way through? This raises yet, as I say, another difficult issue about searching a customer's bags, because these are my bags, they're not the store's bags. Traditionally, years ago, you would put them in a plastic bag at the checkout and then leave the store. In modern times, they are my bags. Now, the store has no legal right to forcibly search my bags. They are not permitted to do that. As I say, they have no more powers than any other citizen, and at best, what they can do is to detain a customer until the police arrive. They cannot force a search. Shoplifting, low-value shoplifting, is one of these strange offences where it's ordinarily tried summarily, but it does remain an indictable offence. But as I say, the store has no power to search my bags. So if I'm walking in with my bags and I'm scanning items into the bag and the store has any suspicions whatsoever, they would have to wait for the police to arrive. But in my view, integrating these self-checkouts with the requirement to scan the receipt on exit, much like many stores such as Tesco have introduced parking receipts, so that you're scanning essentially a parking ticket to avail yourself of the 3 hours of free parking so that you are a customer of the store. That, again, I think many people disagreed with, but overall, if they're allowing you the 3 hours parking because you're shopping there, I don't really see that as a problem. So in a civilized society, I really don't see this as a problem. A lot of people do. I get that. I get that a lot of people do. Maybe you'll leave your thoughts and comments in the box below, whether you are particularly offended by it, whether there's something that I haven't thought of that you might consider to be particularly invasive or intrusive to allow you to leave the store. As I said, it's not with its legal difficulties in the sense that they cannot forcibly detain you there without the suspicion of shoplifting. I don't think that your refusal to scan the receipt by itself is quite enough to justify detaining you on suspicion of shoplifting. In my view, that would be very difficult to uphold in court. I think that they would have to have some other corroborated evidence to suspect you of shoplifting in combination with your refusal to scan the receipt on exit. Like I say, I think there are a few legal issues here, but overall, as a member of society wanting to prevent crime and this sort of stuff, I don't think it's a problem for me personally to scan the receipt on exit. I can see the problems if I don't have the receipt, I've binned it, or it didn't dispense one, or whatever, but I don't think that's really going to happen. If that did happen, I would probably just call someone over and say, hi, excuse me, it didn't give me the receipt, it won't let me leave, so can you just check that I've paid and whatever. I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. But those are just my views. You don't have to agree with me. I'd be interested in your views and as a discussion in the comments section below. But thank you for sending this story to me. Keep sending them to me because I think this one is quite interesting. There's a couple of legal angles to it, and as I say, some people might be offended. But anyway, do remember to like this video and subscribe, and as always, I thank you for watching.